In one of our previous videos, we looked at the periodontium and we said the periodontium is made up of four things. Okay, so we're looking at the periodontium. It's made up of four things, or four structures, four structures, and the way I can remember it, there's different mnemonics. So I'm going to use GPAC as a mnemonic. So you look at a tooth, and around the tooth we see four things that are surrounding that tooth. First thing we see is the gums. Okay, so gingiva. The other thing we see is the periodontal ligament fibers. So these blue lines that we see running across, that is your periodontal ligament fibers. Another thing we see is the yellow, which is the bone. So we see the alveolar bone. So A for alveolar bone. And then we also see the cementum. And cementum is, I'll draw it in so that we can see it. Cementum covers the root. So see if I can probably draw it in brown. Cementum is the layer that is just covering the root. Okay, so cementum is covering the entire root. Now, one of the things I want to focus on for this video is your periodontal ligament fibers. So periodontal ligament fibers, the short way of saying this is P for periodontal, D for dental, and L for ligament. Now, periodontal ligaments have fibers, which are those blue lines that we see running across. Now, there's many different periodontal ligament fibers, and we're going to look at the different ones. So one thing I want to note, or I want you guys to know, is that when we're looking at the bone, okay, so here, the yellow thing that we're looking at is the bone. The very top of the bone, the very crest or the very tip of it is known as your crestal bone, okay, crestal bone, because it's the tip of the bone is known as your alveolar crest. And so naturally, if we were to look at, I'm going to draw this in blue so that we can see it better. If you were to look at this fiber over here that's connecting the alveolar crest to the tooth, that is naturally known as your alveolar crest fibers, because if you look at its location, it's connecting from the tooth to the alveolar crest, which is the tip of the bone. There is another fiber that runs like this horizontally, and so because it runs horizontally, that is known as your horizontal fibers. Okay, let's look at some other fibers. You look at this one over here, do you see how it's kind of slanted? It's running in an oblique fashion or a diagonal fashion. When you have periodontal fibers running in an oblique fashion like so, it is known as your oblique fibers. It's so hard to write on a computer. Okay, can you guys guess what this type of fiber would be called? When it's at the apex of the root. Apex of the root. If you guess apical fibers, you are correct. So when you have fibers that are running from the apex of the root to the bone, it is known as apical fibers. And then what about this one over here? When you have fibers that are in between roots, draw an arrow, it is known as inter. So inter means in between. Interradicular fibers. So we just looked at 5 different fibers, and all these fibers are periodontal ligament fibers. So they're all there, that's holding the tooth in its spot. Without those fibers, the tooth will just pop out. So we need fibers to keep our teeth in place. And there's many other reasons too, which we'll look at different sections of the video. But one thing I want you guys to know is periodontal ligament fibers have 5 principal fiber groups.